so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the warm introduction, though I haven't understood any word of it because unfortunately, I don't speak French. I learned Latin back in school. Bad idea, I know today. But yeah, it's a huge honor and pleasure for me to be here and to talk about something that is really important for me and an important part of my life. So when I was invited to come to this conference and I reflected on what could I talk about, I ended up with this title because that's something I strongly believe in, and I want to try to explain to you why I think that every design that we design, every work that we do is in the end a manifesto for the future, and why this is so important, actually, especially in these days. Usually I start my talks always with a picture from something else that I do, because I'm not only a UX and design and digital person, I also love being outside, and I love going to the mountains. And this is a picture from a mountaineering tour I took 2 years ago, actually. That's the Großvenediger. So I'm from Hamburg, the northern part of Germany. The highest mountain we have there is 160 meters high. But I try to go to the Alps as often as I can. And I do that because of these beautiful views that we have there. But I have another picture for you. That's from last year when I went to the Großglockner. That's the highest mountain of Austria, and climbed up there. And when you look down the one side, and you can see this lake in the center there, and this lake you see there is pretty new, because the glacier tongue, and you can see that on the left there a little bit, just a few years ago reached all the way to where you see the lake now. The glacier is melting year by year by meters, so you can see that if you go there. And that's why I brought this up here. Going to the mountains is for me also a huge reminder of the big mess we are actually in, and it's also a huge driver for what I'm doing. I'm Thorsten, and I dedicated my work life to digital sustainability. Actually, I used to work in a huge agency and lead the UX department and build digital products. But after running through a burnout, I quit my job at the agency and decided, how can I do something that hopefully makes the world a little bit better than it is now. And since then, I'm working in digital sustainability, in responsible AI, and I founded, together with some other beautiful and wonderful people, the Sustainable UX, or SUX network, as we call it. The SUX network is a non-profit initiative community, and you're all invited to join us, so you don't have to buy anything. It's just there for free. It's a global community. We have lots of resources on sustainable design. We do online meetups, we do local meetups, so lots of things actually to get together and to talk and to drive sustainability through and within design. But that's enough of the, hopefully not shameless, self-promotion of these projects that we do. And now let's jump into the talk. And I think the world is on the edge right now, right? We live in really critical times. And I just, actually today, 2 hours before this presentation, I just Googled climate crisis. And these were the first things that came up there. I won't read them all. The thing is, the mess is really there in terms of the environmental crisis we are facing at the moment. And it's not only the environment and the carbon emissions and these things, it's also the social inequalities, right? These 62 people own the same as half of the world. Actually, it's an older number. It got even worse in the past years, I can say. But it's the same with gender equality. Even in our developed Western world countries, we are not getting really better on this. So we are facing huge problems at the moment. And spoiler, ChatGPT will not solve this mess, though sometimes we might believe that AI will be the solution for everything. But I will get back to that later. So what has design to do with this? Are we part of this? Are we part of the problem maybe? Or how can we influence that? Well, I think design decisions that we make shape the world every day. Small decisions, big decisions. And that's what I'm going to talk about today with you. So, first thing, design decisions have a carbon impact. Every decision that we make in our design, every piece that we put somewhere or not, has a carbon impact. And why is that the case? Well, behind every great digital experience that we design, there is a data center pulling a lot of electricity. And I assume most of you have heard about this problem. But it's not only the electricity and the carbon emissions, it's also a lot of fresh water that is used for cooling all these servers that run our digital experiences. Now that might sound a little bit abstract, so here's a concrete example. That's the website of the Danish tax administration. I've been there 2 years ago, I think. So important website, everybody is going there making their tax stuff in Denmark. The user numbers you see there, 2.5 million visits per month, 10 page views per visit, that's the real usage numbers. Their homepage has a carbon impact of 0.8 grams of CO2 per page view. So if you do the math, that's roughly 20 tons of CO2 per month. Or you could fly from Copenhagen to New York 20 times, just because of this one single website. So that's the angle, that's the dimension actually we are talking about. And I was talking about water, and here is a nice number that I quote pretty often from a really great person, Jerry McGovern, and I can highly recommend to follow him on LinkedIn. He's posting a lot of really great things. So they state that all the digital data that is related to me, right, so my digital doppelganger, will by 2030 consume the same amount of water than my body needs to live per year, of every one of us in the Western developed world. And the interesting thing is, most of these data and stuff is just junk. Up to 90% of all the digital data that we are creating, all the contents that we are creating are not used at all. I could elaborate much more on this now, but I don't want to go into more detail. I just want to show you what we are talking about. And the interesting thing is that most of the emission of a product, not only a digital product, also a physical product, usually are set and determined in the design phase. Design phase here does not mean only us, the designers, but also the engineers. So the whole thing from idea to here is a ready-to-ship product. But that's where the emission of the whole life cycle of the product are actually set. And that shows the opportunity and the chance that we have here to change things and to make an impact. So what are concrete examples? I try to bring some concrete small examples for you so that you have an idea and maybe can take some of these home for you as well. So here's an example from a project that I did last year actually, also in Copenhagen. So this is the website of the University of Copenhagen. And you see, so it's the page that shows the master's programs of the website, right? An important page. Many people go there to look, what do I want to study at the university? And this image that you see in the background actually is not an image, it's a video. It's not transporting any important information. It's just there for decoration. And if you measure the carbon impact of this video, then you get these numbers. 4 to 5 gram of carbon emissions per visit just because of the video, right? So if we assume this page has 200,000 visits per year, that results in 1 ton of CO2 emissions just because of this video that is there in the background of this page. So something that is not necessary and nobody needs. But here's another example. Otto is the largest German internet shop. It's like an Amazon, not as evil, but you can buy almost everything there. And so this is a typical product listing page, right? And you can see all the products there have a white background. That was different in the past. By making this change, actually, by changing the background from colorful backgrounds to white backgrounds, they were able to save 150 gigabytes of traffic per month, right? And if they would switch the format of the image, so the most common formats still in the internet are JPEG and PNG. We could use WebP, same quality, but a lot less file size. If they would do that, they would save another 500 gigabytes of traffic per month. So 2 examples for very small changes that make a huge impact already on the carbon impacts of our digital world. So I was speaking about decisions that we make. And I think it's a decision. Not always we can make this decision on our own, but it's a decision to think about what is the carbon impact of my design? What is the carbon impact of the product that I'm working on? And there would be much more to say about carbon-friendly design, but I don't want to stick to this only because there is more. Because our decisions also drive user behavior. And behavioral design is a whole field on its own, but I have just a few examples to show you what I mean. I mentioned Amazon. Well, if you order something at Amazon, you usually get it delivered to your home door, right? And what you can do now is say, oh, please do not deliver it to my home door, but deliver it to the next hub. So I live in Hamburg, pretty big city, not as big as Paris, but big city. And so the next delivery hub is a small kiosk-like thing, just 3-4 minutes walking distance away. And I could say, bring it there. Much more sustainable solution, actually, right? Because the delivery guy, the parcel delivery guy, if he would serve every parcel to everybody's home door, it takes him the whole day just to serve my street that is, I don't know, 500 meters long, maybe. It takes him 15 minutes to just bring it to the delivery hub, right? So less delivery cars driving around, better working conditions for the person. The interesting thing here is I, as a user, have to make this decision, right? I have to say, no, I want to have my parcel delivered to the hub and not to my home door. But we can change this. Here's another example from a shop called Arcade. So, and if you order something there, the default option is delivery to the next pickup location. And if I want to have it delivered to my home door, I have to actively switch this. So we are not taking away any options. We are just switching the default, right? And by this, nudging the user in a positive way. And speaking about positive nudging, here's another example from Patagonia. I assume many of you have heard of them. So just one example, right? They have a lot of filters that I can filter for products there. And what they have a lot of filter options for sustainable products, right? For products that are better for the environment, that are better for the futures. I marked them red there. By this, again, we are nudging the user in a positive way. We say, hey, this is something desirable because it's there as an option that we can choose. And there's one last thing that we could do. It's called salience. What you do there is, and I have marked it there, you mark the sustainable product, right? It's just a text that says, okay, this is from recycled material, but because it's in a position that is special, that is outstanding, it makes the whole product special in the whole product listing. There is a lot more we can do in behavioral design. These were just a few examples, but as you can see, hopefully, it's really small changes that we can make that help us drive the user making more sustainable choices, buying more sustainable products. So the question and the decision for us is, how do we want our users to behave? And that's a decision we can make. Design also can be very inclusive, but it also can be very exclusive. And design decisions very often are very exclusive. Here's an example. Does anybody know, well, I can't see you all, does anybody know what this is? It's called Moja. It's a ride-sharing service by Volkswagen, and it's available in Hamburg and in Hanover. It's still a prototype-like thing. So you have these buses, about 200 in Hamburg, I think, that are circling the city. You have an app on your smartphone, and then you can say, hey, I want to go from here to my friend's house on the other side of the city. And then these Mojas have virtual stops, and the app tells me, yeah, go to the next stop that is maybe just around the corner. Be there in 15 minutes, and Moja will pick you up and bring you to the nearest stop or the closest stop to the location where my friend actually lives. So pretty similar to a taxi thing, cheaper because what it does is it might take a little detour and pick up other people and bring them somewhere else. They are electric driven, so for many reasons, this is a pretty sustainable service, you could say. But who cannot use the service? So this service is in place now for 7 or 8 years, I think. It took them until last year to make it wheelchair ready, for example. So for the first 6 years, wheelchair riders were not able to use the service. And the interesting thing is, from these 200 Mojas they have driving around the city, it takes only 10 to be wheelchair ready to be able to bring the service to wheelchair riders to the whole city, right? So these people were excluded. Then, well, you need a smartphone to use the service. What about elderly people who are not so much into digital? And yes, we still have these people. They are not able to use the service, right? It's not like a bus that I can just board. Blind people. How does a blind person find the virtual stop of the Moja? It's not marked like a bus stop in our city. Again, it took them until also, I think, last year to bring navigation for blind people into the app, so blind people can find the stops of the Moja. So I'm telling you all this because what this pretty nicely shows actually is how a really nice service can be super exclusive. And you could even say, I mean, I'm the least person who needs the service. I can still ride my bike to my friend's house. The people I just named, they cannot ride their bikes. Right? They need the service much more than me, and they are also paying, right? So they are also paying customers. It's really sad that we are excluding this people. And this is a problem that we have in general. MVPs and also personas that we very often create can be highly exclusive, right? This Silicon Valley mantra, fail fast, fail often, is super exclusive by default because we are building our MVPs for stereotypic, idealistic or ideal users, and we leave out a lot of people that might need the service much more. I'm not saying we need to build every or design every service for everybody, but we should think about this. And I try to bring some practical things. So here is a tool that we created at the SUX network actually to tackle such situations. And what you do here is it's a very simple thing. We just switch the point of view and do not think about who is the user of my product, the typical user, but who are the people who cannot use my product. As I see some people taking photos, you can come to our website. There is a link to our Notion space where all these tools are linked with Miro templates and PDF templates, so you can get the stuff there for free. So the idea is just to think about who are the people who cannot use our service or have problems to use it, and then in the lower half you get in more detail, right? So what are the problems, how big are the problems, etc. It's just a switch of the point of view that we very often actually miss, and that is again a decision, right? Who do we want to use our service, or who cannot use our service? And that's a decision we can or should take. Then, when we speak about user experience, we speak a lot about user convenience, right? We create products where we try to make the use of the product, where we try to make the fulfillment of the goals of our user as convenient and easy as possible for them. That's a huge part of our job as UX designers, I would say. But more user convenience never comes for free. So I looked it up. I think you have Uber Eats here in France, right? Yes, because so there are lots of services, and when I go to other countries, I always have to look which service is available there. They are all similar, right? You can order meals there, but you also can order groceries. And you could say it's a pretty good and convenient user experience. Because I have a nice app, it's well designed, more or less, but it is well designed. I can order my stuff, and then, so in Germany, it was said for a long time, in 15 or 30 minutes, someone is ringing at your door and bringing you the stuff that you want. It was even cheaper for a long time because they made a lot of marketing there. So from my perspective as a user, super convenient. The only thing I have to do is order the stuff and then get up from my couch and go to the door when the delivery rider is there. But what's the downside? Well, okay, CE, I didn't change the name. Flink is one of the services we have in Germany. So these companies, they are pretty good in undermining workers' rights. For a long time, the people working, the delivery riders, were not even employed, right? Which means nothing else than they are not social secured. If you want to, and I think it's the same here, right? You have these union-like things in companies. If you want to do something like this at one of these companies, they're pretty good in making sure that you cannot make this as an employee. Then we have our small, and you have the same here in Paris, for example, right? The small grocery stores that we have, the small stores where we can buy fruit and vegetables. They cannot match the not disruptive, but destructive business model of these services, right? So, I mean, they are backed by a lot of venture capital. They do not have to be profitable. That's why they can make the prices so cheap. These small shops cannot match this. So, by using these services, actually, the local infrastructure that we have, and that is already perfect, maybe, gets destroyed. That is the price for the great user experience for me as the user. And this is just one example. It's the same with Airbnb, for example, right? So if I want to go to Lisbon, I will find a nice apartment there via Airbnb, but residents cannot afford to live in the city center anymore. Governments try to do something against it with regulations, but it's still a challenge. Amazon the same, super convenient for me to buy things there, but the price is paid by the people working for these companies. Delivery riders drivers of Amazon, they have super tight working conditions. That means that they sometimes do not even find the time to have lunch because the schedule they have is so tight. There was a research some years ago in Germany. So they have truck drivers driving the goods between the delivery centers of Amazon from north to south, east to west, etc. These people usually come from Eastern Europe, and they work for weeks, months, sometimes, without even having one day off, 7 days a week. Nobody of us would working under these conditions, right? But these people are paying the price for the great user experience for me as the user using Amazon. And that's a general problem that we have with user experience, I think. And I saw a nice guy many years ago at a conference in Malmö, and this is still like a mantra for me and for my work. The guy is called Kevin Slevin, and he back then said in his talk, when designers center around the user, where do the needs and desires of the other actors in the system go? Right? The lens of the user obscures the view on the ecosystem it affects. And that is, as I said, I think a general problem that we have with UX. We are focusing so much on our user that we totally forget about what's happening around it. I mean, it's even our tools, right? The user is always in the center. But the user maybe shouldn't be the center, since it is just one part of a complex ecosystem. And that's something, well, so that's not my idea. Many very smart people have talked about that before or written that in books. We need to move from how we do human-centered design to something that is humanity. Don Norman always speaks about humanity-centered design, and also environmental-centered. As I said, the user must not be the center of our work. The user is one part of the system. And bringing these things into balance, actually, is one of the core challenges that I and a bunch of other people working in this field actually see. So that we actually need to change, right? The user should not be the center, but a balanced part of the whole ecosystem. Here are two more examples for tools that you could use for this. A simple tool that we have built is, we call it needs to consequences mapping. So the idea here real quick is we always deal with user needs and with business needs, right? And then we try to bring that together. We want to fulfill the user needs, and then we have the sometimes annoying business needs that we somehow need to fulfill, and then we try to bring that all together. What you do in this canvas here actually is, so in the lower part you have the user needs and business needs. On the upper part you have the potential or concrete negative consequences of the product, of the service, of the experience. And then you can even look for connections. So which of my user needs is directly connected to which negative consequences? Creating an understanding of the surrounding ecosystem is an important part of designing more sustainable and I think also better in terms of for the future products and experiences. So this is a pretty high-level tool. You can also, I think you all know user journeys, right? We use that pretty often. And what you can do here is, and you see that in the lower part is, just add additional layers of information. We call that the sustainability layers, but it's, right, so who are other actors that are impacted by certain steps of the user journey? So for example, at the Amazon journey, there is the delivery driver that brings my parcel, who is an impacted actor. What are environmental pain points? What are societal pain points of each step of the journey? By breaking it down to the user journey, we get to a level where we also can ideate about how can we do this certain thing better or that certain thing better. That's what you see in the last lane. Because that's, from my experience over the past years, always the challenge, right? Understanding what are the negative impacts, what are the problems, and then breaking them down into actionable items. So the question and the decision for us is, who pays the price for the user experiences we design? And there is always a price that needs to be paid. Very often it's hidden and not obvious. And most often it's not the whatever euros the service costs for the user. And that brings me to the next point, because we also have a problem how we treat our users sometimes, I think. And I think design and our decisions are unfortunately a vehicle that helps driving the growth economy. And well, I personally think that is a big problem because, well, if everything is growing and the earth is not, then we have a problem. But that's a whole talk on its own. I have a picture of you, and I'm really curious if someone knows what you can see on this picture. Does anybody? No. Awesome. It's from a movie, and the movie is based on a book. It's the book Momo by Michael Ende. Has anybody heard about this book? Ah, that's wonderful. Everybody who have not heard about this book, I can so much recommend to read it. Officially it's a kid's book. It's from the 70s, but it's not. It's a perfect metaphor for nowadays times. So what happens at Momo? It's a pretty nice world, actually. Momo is a little kid, and she is living in a nice world. People are super nice to each other. They spend time, they make breaks, they drink coffee together. Very well to be seen in the movie. And then one day, these people show up, the gray gentlemen, as they call themselves. And they explain the people that they waste their time. They lure the people into selling them their time. They lure the people into being more efficient, into fulfilling more in the same amount of time. And by doing this, they steal the time from the people, and while they're stealing the time, the world gets more and more gray, like the gray gentlemen are. So they actually need the time. They smoke it in time cigars. So they make a beautiful, colorful world, gray and sad, by stealing the time of the people. In the end, Momo is able to save the world, actually, and to defeat the gray gentleman. So there is a good ending. But why did I show you this? I want to show you another picture, and I assume many of you know this book. It's like I think it's 11 years ago, 2014. And I think this is something we still do, right? We design products and experiences that influence our users in terms of using the products longer than they maybe should, right? The time someone uses the experiences in the products we design is actually a KPI still, very often. So, doesn't make this us, the great gentlemen? A little bit, but I think we should be Momo, right? We are fighting for the user all the time, but I think we forget about this sometimes, and that's something we should change. And that's a general question. What products and experiences do we want to design, and what not? I know it's sometimes not easy and sometimes even not possible to say no, but it's something we need to think about. What's the products that we want to design and what not? What's an evil product or service? And that brings me one step further, because we as designers also shape narratives, I think. Here's an image from New York around 1900. And what you can see here is actually, right, a crowded street, many people on the streets, some horses, but no cars. And what happened then, a few years later, the first cars showed up. And then accidents happened, right? I mean, the street is already crowded, and you can imagine if you have cars showing up there, that might be a problem. And that became a real problem. People died, and the public opinion actually, and the newspapers were full of things like this, right? So cars and their drivers were seen as the evil, as the grim reaper bringing death to the streets of the cities. And what happened back then, that became a problem for the car industry. So car sales dropped by, I have the number here, I think it's 25% in 1 year, 1924, just because of this. And then the car industry was like, okay, well, what can we do about this? Well, good idea. Let's blame the pedestrians. Let's say they are too stupid to interact with the cars driving the cities. They invented the term jaywalking, actually, back then. So a jay was a person, like a word for someone coming from the countryside, so a little dumb person that is not smart enough to navigate the sophisticated streets of the cities. That's the narrative that they made up back then. And I think what happened back then resulted in the streets that we are still facing. And I know, Paris is doing a better job than most of the German cities, I can tell, in terms of making cities more for humans and less for cars, but that's still the reality we have so often, right? But I showed you this for another reason. I think you have all heard about the personal carbon footprint, right? So what is my personal carbon footprint? And I assume there must be a few people who invented the personal carbon footprint. Oil companies. Some say it was BP, others say it was Shell. It doesn't matter. They invented it to blame us, actually, or making us responsible for the problem and taking the responsibility away from them. It's the same move like the car companies did 80 years earlier, right? And now we are building these things, right? I try not to fly. I try to do everything by train, and it works pretty well in Europe. I came yesterday by train. It's always beautiful to come here by train. But we build these things, right? Fly carbon neutral, do this carbon neutral, do that carbon neutral. That's nothing else than putting the responsibility to the user. We even let the user pay for it, right? Though it should be the airline maybe paying for it. And there is one more thing, because all this carbon offsetting is maybe not as good as we think. It's a research from The Guardian from 2 years ago, I think, that found out that most of the carbon offsets of one of the biggest companies actually were just useless. And I'm not saying carbon offsetting is always bad, right? It's also part of the mix, but it's not the main solution. And speaking about what is the main solution and what not, I couldn't resist to bring that in, because we so often have the feeling that if we make all of our cars just electric, then everything will be good. Probably is not, and I think this tweet from 4 years ago still says this very, very well, right? It's not about making every car electric. So, are we solving the right problems the right way? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves quite often. But we also choose tools. And when I was thinking about this talk, well, I also was thinking about AI, and I couldn't do this talk without leaving AI out, and so now is the time to talk about AI. Right? So you might remember this. We use still a lot Figma, and now we can use AI there or in any other tools. It's part of our design life and of our maybe creativity. But what's the price? Well, 230 ChatGPT queries emit approximately 1 kilogram of CO2. And why did I bring up this number? Well, I want to bring up my image from the very beginning, my picture from the very beginning once more, because 1 kilogram of CO2 costs us 15 kilograms of glacier ice. And there is more. I was speaking about the water that is used for cooling our servers in the data centers. And you might remember this wave of Ghibli-style images we have seen that is wrong for so many reasons. But here's a nice number that shows 1 million Ghibli-style images consume approximately 40,000 liters of water. That could sustain 2,000 people per day, just for this thing we maybe don't need. But then people sometimes say, yeah, but we can be so creative with AI. Everything is just one prompt away, right? It makes my work life so much easier to create things with prompts. Yeah, well, who's paying the price? So, did the creators of this Ghibli style wanted to have their stuff used by OpenAI? No, they didn't. And they haven't been asked. And it's even worse. These models, and it doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT or Midjourney or whatever, they are pretty good in reproducing replicas of trademarked things. Here's an example from movie scenes, right? So you can recreate movie pictures from movies almost one-on-one without even naming the movie in the prompt. Here's an example from the New York Times. That was a very famous lawsuit 2 years ago, I think. So what happened there is, in ChatGPT, when you used a full sentence from a New York Times article in your prompt, it could happen that ChatGPT gave back the whole article. But it didn't say that it was the article from the New York Times. Right? The price for creating with AI is paid by other human creators and designers. Their work is necessary for the training of these tools. And big tech actually is using these things on purpose. For example, so it was just revealed that Meta used one of the biggest pirate libraries of books and academic papers, etc. It's called, I think, LibGen or something like this. So they used it on purpose to train their tool. Well, and now we use these tools to create our designs. What can go wrong? Well, when Figma introduced their new feature last year, then this happened a few weeks later. Maybe some of you have heard about this. Someone said, hey, Figma, create a weather app. And the weather app looked almost the same like the Apple weather app. But the person didn't say, make me the Apple weather app. And what also happened is, when Figma rolled out this feature, you, as a user of Figma, had to actively opt out of having your designs being used for the training of their AI. So what does that mean? Well, our designs become the future result of the prompt of someone else. And by the way, how creative is copying someone else? Just 2 more examples, right? What do you assume, what do I get when I prompt for Italian video game? Super Mario. How creative is dead. And it's even worse. What do I get when I prompt for basketball player and depressed person? That's an experiment of a friend of mine. He spoke about that last year. So these are pictures from his talk, Greg Noodleman. He's doing great work on UX and AI, actually. So on the left side, you see the basketball player. There is an orange marker there that marks the only woman. Basketball player, as an English word, does not have a gender in it. Still, there were only male basketball players. Depressed person also does not have a gender in it, but there are only women to see. Those statistics show actually more men are depressed than women, right? So it's also heavily biased. And what does that make with the designs that we create with these tools? And, well, I need to look a little bit for the time. But I want to real quick go into why this is happening. Because what generative AI is, in the end, it's a brute force calculating the highest probability based on the given data set machine. And here's some work of a friend of mine. She worked on actually creating personas with AI and made a lot of experiments there. I can highly recommend to look into her work. The important thing here is, so what AI does in the training actually, it's looking at a data set and it's looking for the things that are in there, and it's creating so-called tokens based on the connections, and things that are more often in the data set become stronger signals actually in the data set. And what that means is, over time, the strong signals, so the things that are the most common in the data set, they will prevail, but the weak signals that are not so often in the data set, they will vanish over time, right? And she makes an interesting point. Where does our creativity come from? From common sense, or from doing something different than anybody else did? Apple did not invent the iPhone, but someone else at some point before came to the point and said, hey, let's make a new phone that has no keys but a touchscreen. Generative AI, in the way it works today, would not have been able to make the step. It would have made a bigger phone with more keys, etc. But it would not have been able to make this evolutionary or revolutionary step, right? So, and if we think about this weak and strong signals, and if only the strong signals prevail, what does that make with our designs, with our design research results, with these adaptive interfaces that we maybe create with AI, if the weak signals are not considered by the AI we use? Will things become more and more the same over time? Will we again exclude people that have different needs? I'm afraid. So the key point on AI and creativity is AI creates the illusion of creativity, but in the end, it sets conformity. And I think the way we use AI today defines our future work as well as the future of design in general. Right? Are we the bridge between tech and human? And I think we can be. Or are we just eaten up by tech ourselves? And I think that's the challenge. I'm not saying we should not use AI in general, right? It can be useful, yes, but not in this way we do it nowadays. So I'm almost at the end. I might need 1 or 2 more minutes, but we design for a tech-dominated world. And I couldn't resist to bring up this image, and I guess many of you have seen it, right? That's from the inauguration of Trump, when all these big tech guys showed up there and smiled to the new president. Do we want these people to shape our future? Well, I do not want this, but at the moment they are doing, right? They are creating the world in the way they want. And I mean, the person you do not even see here is Peter Thiel. He is maybe the most evil one of all of them, but that's a whole story on its own. The problem with tech is, in general, tech wants to create a simple world of zeros and ones. That's how digital works. That's also how AI works in the end, right? Are you above average or not? Are you 0, 1? Strong signals prevail, weak signals vanish. But in difference, what is human? Human is the exact opposite. We are always something between 0 and 1. Nobody of us is a 0 or is a 1, right? We are always somewhere in between. And that's a big problem, I think, the way how we use tech nowadays, because we design services based on how tech works. And I mean, how often have you called a call center or filled out a form where you felt like, okay, the option that I need is not there. It's happening all the time. Charlie Chaplin said a very nice thing many, many years ago: more than machinery, we need humanity. And that's the one thing I'm missing in the whole discussion about AI at the moment. As I said, it's not about not using it in general, but how do we use it? And the question for us is, hey, what do we want to design? Do we want to support the tech dystopia we are running towards at the moment? Or do we want to shape a humane future? And that brings me to the last point. We need to design new narratives. And here's a quote from Peter Sondergaard, also a tech consulting guy. So he said, information is the oil of the 21st century, and analytics is the combustion engine. Really? I mean, I remember that, right? Data is the new oil. We have heard that back in the early years of this century. But if that is true, how could these things happen? The climate catastrophe is still discussed and denied by too many people in power, and their number is increasing, though data shows exactly since decades what's happening there. Trump was elected to return to the White House, not because of data or any economic data or whatever, right? I mean, he would even, with his track record, would not get a job at McDonald's in this country, but he can become the president. I mean, we in Germany have a fascist and Nazi problem again at the moment, right? We just had an election and damn Nazi party got more than 20%, which is insane. And in general, inequalities are growing globally and locally. And our solution is to rebuild borders and make the rich even richer. When I'm going back to Germany tomorrow, also a great idea of our government, actually there will be border controls. So policemen will come to the train and look at my passport. It's insane. And this is not happening because of data. There we go. Our world is not driven by data, it's driven by narratives, by stories. And the false narratives are unfortunately dominating. And here is another nice quote that's also, like, for me, like a mantra. It's by Monika Bielskite. She's a future designer. And she said, "Who controls the fantasy controls the future." And I think this is really important at the moment. It's like a battle for who's telling the better stories, and that's how these bad people, this fascists, this Nazis, but also the climate catastrophe deniers are getting so much power. They are telling lies, but they are easy stories. So when we want to shape the future, we need to design more than better products and experiences. We need to design new narratives. And why us? Well, design is storytelling. And user journeys are nothing else than great storylines. Now you could say, and I'm coming to an end now, well, Thorsten, sounds good, but I'm just a lonely designer. I have no impact. I have no influence. And I think that's not true. We make decisions every day in our design work, right? Small decisions, big decisions, direct, indirect. I showed you a few in my talk, and I won't read them all again. Some of them are very small decisions, some of them are big decisions. I might not be able to influence all of them, but for sure I'm able to influence one or two. And the Greek philosopher and mathematician, I don't know how to say that in English, Pythagoras, said so well, choices are the hinges of destiny. And I think it's the choices we take today. It's the small choices we take in our designs, actually. It's the decisions that we take that not only shape our designs, but that shape ourselves, our users, and by this, the world and the future, no matter how small they seem. And I want to let you go with two questions that I invite you to ask yourself in the designs that you create. First one is, what is the real price for my design, and who has to pay it? Do I really know that? And second one, how do I balance my design with the surrounding ecosystem? I think each design is a statement, no matter if I'm designing just one screen with a few buttons or a whole product. Each design is a statement, and I think in the world we are facing today, we need more of these statements because we need to counter all these wrong statements and stories that are out there. And I have a lot of hope because we are more. Numbers show that. And so I have one last quote for you. That's by Amanda Gorman. She's the young woman that spoke at the inauguration of Joe Biden 4 years ago. And back then she said, "For there is always light if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it." And I think this is the important thing. We still are in the situation that we need to be this light for more people. We need to be the example for more people. And I do this for some years now, and I can see the progress. It's exhausting, it's difficult, it's not working all the time, but over time, over the past years, it is working. And this is my invitation to you to join on this journey. Thank you very much. So you're looking for a microphone, I can see that. Do you have any questions? I know I went a little bit over time, but there is a question. There.
Okay, firstly, I want to thank you for such a beautiful presentation. It gives us really, really much reflection on design. Thank you. And I would like to ask the question, which is perhaps a little bit méchant, a little bit, bad guy. Can you share with us one of the example or some example that in your vision, you will choose not to use AI in your design process, please?
Let me try to answer it this way. I think the problem with AI in general is, so the storyline of big tech is that AI is the magic wand that does everything, right? So what's the icon, what's the symbol for AI? It's these magic sparkles or the wand, right? Wherever you use AI, you have one of these icons. It always suggests it's magic that can do everything for me, and that is just not true. We need to see it as a tool with limitations. One of my professors, who was one of my professors 20 years ago, many years ago, whatever, he said, and let me see if I can reimagine that, human thinks the image, machine creates it. And I think this is for me the thing, right? So what I still need to do the work, and if I use AI, it's a companion. It's something I can play ping pong with. So for me, I'm not a native English speaker. If I write a text in English, I write the text first, then I put it into AI, say, hey, rewrite this paragraph of text. And then I take this and work with this and change it again. That's a process that works. But for me personally, for example, that's the only use case I use AI for at the moment. So when I'm writing text to put a text in there and to get an alternative for it in terms of finding other words for my sentences. But seeing it as a tool with a lot of limitations, that's, for me, I think, the borderline. Does it answer your question? Yes. Thank you. Are there more questions? There might be time for one more question. I'm sorry.
Une dernière question.
It's also okay if you don't. I will be here for the rest of the day, so please, I invite you to come to me and let's discuss further. Also, if you have other opinions or questions. And join the SUX network if you want. As I said, it's for free. Community is key, actually. Together we are stronger, and together we can change this world for sure. Thank you so much.